Chapter 3 Alpha. It is dawn, and the initial soft and silky rays of Sa grace the interior of my tree-fixed abode by the slivers in the wood and by the casements ajar. Exhausted in that home where it's safe to be so, a final breeze enters through my window as I slip it shut. Orma's breath lingers. Something moves it. But I am alone here. Or thus I presume, yet the weight of watching eyes rests upon my shoulders. My track command is blind to it. There's but one being in all a vessel whom I know of that can elude my greatest sense. Captain! I whirl about, coming face to face with my superior, and our pack's salute follows with urgency. 2 clenched fist beats upon the left pec, then on the third, 4 digits extend flat, parallel to one another whilst the thumb bends inward towards the palm. N. We are not savages here. We have doors, thus they are to be used. Captain Yindra stands there, his arms crossed, fully suited in the customs of his sandy home, notwithstanding that he is long and far from it. Yindra hails from the sole Omani settlement situated in the desert, though it is lined on its eastern front by the jungle of Sutama, that city which is the dune and tree-encased Omin. I have no excuse. I simply lacked any motivation to retrieve my uniform. I apologize if I upset you or caused any inconvenience for the village at large. I say with my hands now behind my head, scratching it in a fidget. Guilty as I am, still I chuckle, for I feel the setting gradually slacken as the captain dons a smile at my forthrightness. Intel? Straight to the heart of the matter. Yindra bears no concern that I broke the rules. Nor is the captain in any form at obligation to explain to me how it is that he knows of my sneaking out from the village to begin with. Argul were used as mercenaries for the Tamas to ambush a shipment of fineries and luck. I believe the Argul attempted to bask in the rewards themselves, leaving the Tamasu who hired them with little option but to massacre them. I intentionally refrained from mentioning the map and a few supplementary yet important details. The captain buys it. At the very least, that's what his facial expressions portray. I did not necessarily lie. However, withholding any particulars from my better is rather ill-fitted of me. I'll have the rest of the pack look into it come noon. Get some rest. Yes, Captain. Yindra's essence remains and tarries for hours after his departure. Such power and bearing is the result of a conglomerate of qualities and the shedding of those extraneous. Only by dire necessity does someone come to have such an air about him. Some of those obligatory qualities obtained through decades of training, by trial and by error, by failure and by triumph, by experience and by rumination. Of course, all of this accompanied by an excellent soul conferred by the Mother Well. The captain, Denai, and a couple of others are the only wolves from our pack who've done any real battle with Tamas warriors, first-hand on the field. I have lent support in the past, albeit, as I've recalled, exclusively from the shadows of the rear. This is not so unheard of. Most of my generation's wolves have only had run-ins with raiding parties far from our walls. None of our skirmishes being critical or momentous enough to provoke another war. Broadly speaking, we tend to keep the upper hand in those encounters. However, the captain alone has exhibited the indispensable excellence required to rival one of their most powerful fighters, in one instance frustrating his efforts and single-handedly crushing a pack outside the walls of Hardar. This character is Ivyar, a champion of the Tamas rumored to expand and evolve in his vigor and might, day by day, hour by hour, from one moment to the next, as he ages and as he lives. As long as he draws breath, each respiration is subsequently greater than the last. There's a plethora of reasons that the captain is an esteemed alpha. However, the inordinate 2 of those reasons are through Ivyar's consequence. Yindra is the only wolf to survive combat with him, and he did so twice. It wholeheartedly escapes me as to why an accomplished Omanu such as himself had personally selected me to join his pack. Denai had once told me that the captain sensed something anomalous in me. I wonder what that could have been. I can say with certainty that it isn't my obedience. My sleep was brief yet sufficient. I yearn to train. All I can think of is the coming rematch. That antagonistic reunion, I feel as though I know this soul, and that, possibly, if I defeat him and earn his respect, truly, we may chance a friendship. The Tamas reveres strength, and thus this is my reconciliation for believing that aught I best him, such a notion is not improbable. Regardless of his preconceived and racially shared supposition that our kinds cannot achieve such a connection, I shall risk and put forth the immaterial resources required to build such a bridge myself. This will be the first stone turned in searching for that which may unify our kinds. Awakened to the call of practice, I give notice to the captain that I will be away for some time with the intent to hone my skills. My leave is granted. I depart for my customary training grounds, a 2-day languid journey from Essel. Serene, secluded, tranquil, Lake Rahata. Dubbed so by me personally, as I know a few others that know of it. This body of still water is wedged between two lone and immature mountains, broad in their scope, yet short in their peaks, to the northeast of Essel. It is obscured from the naked eye, haven to explorers, and a rehabilitory prison for the ego. A well-known rumor and a well-kept secret. This is where it is that I prefer to condition myself mentally, physically, and spiritually. There exists no distraction for Kalama, no sound aside that which is natural, no sight aside that which is still, no scent that prompts my stomach, and thus no excuse may be produced in earnest ought there be any lack in my efforts to better myself. If a shortage in my concentration were to be found, then it is of my own shortcoming, and in combat of this, I need only seize the moment and meditate upon the expulsion of whatsoever disturbance has discomposed me. I face the idle, unmoving lake. Cool breath in, warm breath out. I speak these following words of potential, and they, as my invocation, give rise to power. Command, wait. Command, track. Command, mask. The polished stone grounds beneath my soles chinks and ruptures. A weightier mass, a heightened acuity, and an unseeable umatic armor all engaged in concert. My body sings. This training exercise forces me to maintain the delicate flow of my intact, whilst juggling an array of commands. I have dubbed it command versatile. All right, Anne. Hold it for as long as you may. I let my intentions be known, aloud, and yet to myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 57, 58, 59, 1 minute. That's a new best for me. And fate willing, I shall be able to double it in less than 3 weeks' time, ought I remain diligent and consistent in my discipline. I repeat the process, paying an unalloyed attention to minute details such as how I spread and paint the armor of Thinly on some spots, broadly on others. I double the coat around my ears. This ought prevent me from suffering a loss of the corporeal control in my legs against his screeching blade. I cannot help but grin at my progress, and more so at my potential. My formidability next time around ought impress him if he is not already so. I wonder how it is that he prepares himself. If he is preparing, that is. I'm inclined enough, intellectually, to see that this implied rematch could very well be a trap. And thus, I shall most definitely leave the map behind. I ought to request reinforcements, but who can I trust with such a secret? The image of an Omani and a Tamas conducting an affable spar would disrupt the fragile and hostile worldviews that our societies have imposed on our relations with one another. My doubt is heavy that they'd accept it as an omen of building, expansion, and fusion. All the worse, if the situation runs completely astray and I am ambushed, I run the risk of our races marching for war. And that is a heavy if, reliant on whether or not the kingdom of Omani cares enough for me. A fungible, wholly dispensable individual citizen. However, I'd fancy to believe, ought a war be waged if it would be pursued for the sake of any Omani, irrespective of name, murdered by a party of Tamas rather than a personal attribution to who specifically is killed, as I am just another cog alike the many in our kingdom. And thus the question beckons, would our king declare war on the Tamas for the cause and memory of a single Omanu, or an ideal which I may futilely represent? Or rather, would he be doing so only in name, sanctimoniously, and the true identity of his motivation would lie in his protection of power as a means to keep the Tamas in check and at bay? These are aspects to consider, indeed, for outrage is oft used as justification of conflict, when it ought to be the conflict of justifications that produces outrage. Perhaps this is a play of semantics. Or perhaps I have stumbled upon something of value.